The envelope looked normal at first. White paper, clear window, my name printed neatly in black ink. I almost tossed it on the counter with the rest of the mail, but then my eyes caught the bold words stamped across the page. Paid in full. I stood there in my hallway, keys still in my hand, jacket half off, staring at those words like they belonged to someone else. For a moment, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. My mortgage wasn't supposed to be paid off. Not even close. I still had years to go. I flipped the envelope over, as if the back might explain the mistake. It didn't. Inside was an official letter from my lender. My loan number. My home address. A cheerful paragraph thanking me for my final payment and confirming that the lien on my house had been released. Released. That word made my stomach tighten. Just the day before, my daughter had been sitting at my kitchen table, hands folded, voice soft in that careful way she used when she wanted something. She had asked me, again, to put the house in the family's name for protection. "What if something happens to you, Dad?" she'd said. "It's safer this way." I remembered the sound of water running in the sink as I rinsed a coffee mug, trying to stay calm. I told her the same thing I always did. The house was already protected. It was in my name. It was insured. It was mine. Her mouth had tightened like I'd insulted her. "After everything I've done for you," she whispered, "you won't even do this one simple thing." That's how she framed it. Like boundaries were betrayal. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue about the past. I just said no. She left without yelling, but the look she gave me at the door wasn't anger. It was certainty, like she already knew she'd find another way. Now I was holding proof that she had. I didn't rush over to confront her. I'd learned the hard way that confrontation only gave her space to twist the story. Paper didn't lie. Systems didn't improvise. I sat at the dining table and read the letter again. The loan had been satisfied. A lien release had been processed. There was even a reference number for a recorded document that would arrive separately. Recorded document. That meant county records. That meant title history. That meant my name, or worse, could already be moving through a system I hadn't touched. I picked up my phone and called my daughter anyway. I needed her reaction in real time. She answered quickly, her voice light, almost cheerful. "I just opened my mail," I said evenly. "It says my mortgage is paid in full." There was a pause, just long enough to notice. "That can't be right," she said, laughing softly. "Are you sure? It says the lien was released." Another small laugh. "Maybe you finally caught up on your payments and forgot." "My payments are automatic," I replied. "And I didn't pay off 6 figures overnight." She sighed, dramatic. "Dad, I don't know what you want me to say. Call them. It's probably a mistake." Her tone shifted when I said I'd go in person. Too sharp. Too quick. Then, just as fast, it softened again. "Don't stress yourself out," she said. "You've been anxious lately." That was the first red flag. Plant doubt. Make me question myself. I ended the call without responding. Then I did the smart thing. I took photos of the letter with the date visible. I opened my lender's app. My mortgage account wasn't showing a zero balance. It was gone. And that's when I knew this wasn't a mistake. I stared at my phone longer than I should have. The app still worked. My login was fine. But when I tapped on my mortgage, it redirected me to a generic message about closed accounts and a customer service number. Not paid down. Not paid ahead. Closed. That's when the tight feeling in my chest settled into something colder and sharper. I'd spent my whole life trusting paperwork. Bills. Statements. Records. I believed that if you followed the rules, the system protected you. Now the system was telling me my house was free and clear, and I knew I hadn't done that. I didn't panic. Panic makes you sloppy. Instead, I grabbed the letter, my wallet, and my keys, and drove straight to the lender's local office as soon as they opened. The letter sat on the passenger seat like evidence. The building was modern and calm, all glass walls and soft music, designed to make you feel silly for being worried. I didn't let it. At the front desk, I told the receptionist I needed to speak to someone in payoff services. I said my loan was showing as paid in full and I hadn't authorized it. Her smile faded just a little. She handed me a clipboard. A few minutes later, a man in a blue dress shirt called my name and led me into a small office. He sat down at his computer, typed for a bit, then paused in a way that made my stomach sink. "I see the payoff," he said carefully. "I didn't pay it," I replied. He nodded, still looking at the screen. "The funds came through as a wire transfer. The lien release was processed right after." My mouth went dry. "Who sent the wire?" He hesitated. "I can't give full details yet, but the file includes a signed borrower authorization and a notarized release request. A release request? I repeated. He turned the monitor toward me. On the screen was a scanned document with my name typed neatly at the top. At the bottom was a signature that was supposed to be mine. It wasn't. It was close enough to fool someone in a hurry, but it was wrong in the way fake signatures always are. Too careful, too slow, like someone drawing instead of writing. I didn't sign that, I said. The man leaned in, zooming closer. His expression changed. Not confused, not doubtful, serious. This was notarized yesterday, he said. Yesterday. He clicked into another tab. There's a notary certificate attached. Commission number, stamp, everything. My hands tightened on the arms of the chair. Who's the notary? He read the name, then looked up at me. Do you know someone named Brenda Holt? I felt my stomach drop. I didn't just know the name. I knew exactly why my daughter had asked me, one last time, to put the house in the family's name the day before. She's a notary, my daughter used to say casually. She helps people when things need to move fast. I looked back at the lender rep. Was this notarization in person or remote? Remote online, he said quietly. That mattered. Remote notarizations leave trails. Video recordings. Audit logs. IP addresses. If someone had forged this, they'd done it inside a system that remembers everything. I'm disputing this signature, I said. I need the full payoff file. Everything. He nodded. I need to escalate this to fraud and compliance. He left the room, and I sat there listening to the soft lobby music bleeding through the glass. It felt like a joke. When he came back, he wasn't alone. A woman in a dark blazer stepped in, tablet in hand. Mr. Mercer, she said. I'm with internal investigations. And just like that, my family problem became a criminal one. The woman introduced herself calmly, like someone used to walking into rooms where people's lives were already unraveling. She didn't waste time with sympathy or small talk. She asked questions. Clear ones. Careful ones. You're saying you did not authorize this payoff, she said, fingers moving across her tablet. You did not sign the release, and you did not appear before a notary yesterday. Correct? That's correct, I said. She nodded once. Do you recognize the notary? Yes, I replied. She's known to my daughter. That was enough to change the air in the room. Not panic. Focus. She asked if my daughter had access to my identification. I didn't dramatize. I told the truth. She'd been in my house the day before. She'd asked again about the house. I'd said no. The letter arrived the next morning. The lender rep pulled up more documents. This time faster. More carefully. The investigator watched every line on the screen. What email was used for the remote notarization? She asked. The rep read it out loud. It wasn't mine. What address was listed for return of the recorded documents? He scrolled, then paused. His face tightened. He read the address. It was my daughter's. I felt something hard settle in my chest. She hadn't just pushed this through. She'd planned where the paperwork would land. She'd positioned herself to control the next step. That's enough to open a fraud case, the investigator said. We're placing a hold on any further processing. The rep hesitated. But the loan is already closed. Closed doesn't mean untouchable, she replied. We can flag the release as disputed if it hasn't fully indexed. She turned to me. You need to protect your title immediately. I already knew that. I nodded. She told me to go straight to the county recorder and pull the property history. Anything recorded in the last 48 hours would show up. If something had moved, we'd see it there. Before I left, they printed everything. The payoff summary, the forged authorization, the notary certificate, a single page labeled Remote Online Notary Audit. It listed the session time, the email used, and something else that caught my eye. IP address. This matters, she said. We're preserving the video and logs. As I stood to leave, the rep cleared his throat. There's one more thing. He pulled up internal notes. A call log from the day before. Someone had called to confirm payoff procedures. The phone number was printed at the top of the page. It was my daughter's number. She hadn't even tried to hide it. The investigator didn't react emotionally. She reacted procedurally. We're opening a formal case. You should file a police report today. This is identity theft and forgery. I will, I said. She handed me her card. Don't confront her yet. Let the system work. I walked out of the building holding a folder that felt heavier than it should have. 2 hours earlier, I thought I had a paid-off house. Now I had proof that someone tried to take it. I drove straight to the county recorder's office. The waiting room was crowded. People clutching envelopes, Folders, Hope. When my number was called, I stepped forward and slid my ID across the counter. I need the full record history for my property, I said. I believe something was recorded without my authorization. The clerk typed my address. His eyes narrowed as the screen loaded. Then he went very still. There was a recording yesterday, he said quietly. My throat tightened. What kind? He clicked again. A satisfaction of mortgage, he said. I swallowed. And he didn't look at me when he answered. A deed. And in that moment, I realized this was never about helping me. It was about taking everything. I kept my hand steady on the counter, even though everything inside me wanted to pull back. The word deed hung in the air heavier than anything else he'd said. To who? I asked. The clerk scrolled slowly, like he already knew the answer would hurt. His finger stopped on a line, and he read the name out loud. My daughter. For a moment, I didn't speak. I let the reality settle into its true shape. She hadn't paid off my mortgage to help me. She'd cleared it so the house could be taken clean, without a lender in the way. I need certified copies, I said calmly. Everything recorded yesterday, and I need the submission details. The clerk nodded. His tone changed. Less routine, more careful. If this deed was notarized, he said, this becomes a fraud investigation. I understand, I replied. That's exactly what this is. He pulled up the deed image and zoomed in on the notary section. The screen sharpened line by line, and when the name came into focus, his expression shifted again. It was the same notary from the lender's file. Brenda Holt. This document claims you personally appeared yesterday and signed a quitclaim deed transferring ownership to your daughter, he said. I did not, I said. He studied my face for a second, then asked a question that told me he'd seen this before. Were you at work yesterday? Somewhere with cameras or time records? Yes, I answered. And I can prove it. He nodded once. Then we're going to do two things today. We'll print certified copies, and we'll place a fraud alert on the property. As the printer hummed, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't look at it. I didn't need to. I already knew who it was. When the pages slid across the counter, the clerk didn't treat them like normal documents. He handled them like evidence. A certified satisfaction of mortgage. A certified quitclaim deed transferring my house to my daughter. A timestamp from the afternoon before. I took a slow breath. Who submitted the recording? He clicked deeper into the system. It was filed electronically through an escrow company. Which one? He read the name. Palm Ridge Escrow. That matched what the lender investigator had told me. The payoff wire hadn't come from me. It had come from escrow. This wasn't a favor. It was a transaction. And the return address. I asked. He scrolled. His mouth tightened. Your daughter's address. Every official document. Routed to her. I asked him to place the fraud alert immediately. He handed me a form like he'd been waiting for the request. This won't undo the recording, he said. But it makes future transfers harder. Harder wasn't enough. Not when things could move this fast. Is anything else pending? I asked. Any new activity today? He checked again. This time he hesitated before answering. There's a title inquiry from this morning, he said. Pre-close review. My stomach dropped. A pre-close review means a sale, I said. He nodded. So she wasn't just taking my house. She was trying to move it out of reach before anyone could stop her. I asked him to print that too. He did. As I filled out the fraud alert form, my phone buzzed again. This time I looked. A text from my daughter. Don't do anything stupid. I fixed your mortgage. You should be thanking me. I took a screenshot. I saved it. I didn't respond. Because now I had proof. And proof moves faster than lies. I left the recorder's office with a folder thick enough to bend. Certified copies. Fraud alerts. Proof that my house had been taken on paper while I was still living inside it. Outside, I sat in my car for a moment without starting the engine. I needed one clean thought at a time. Panic would only slow me down. The next step was obvious. Title insurance. I remembered signing the policy years ago, barely reading it, thinking it was just another closing document I'd never need. Now it felt like a lifeline. I called the title company listed on my original closing statement. When the woman answered, her voice was bright, until I said the words she heard in worst-case scenarios. I believe a forged deed was recorded against my property, I said. It transferred my house to my daughter. There was a pause. Then keys tapping. Her tone shifted. I see the recording, she said quietly. And the satisfaction of mortgage from yesterday. Yes, I replied. The notary is Brenda Holt. An escrow company submitted it. Another pause. Longer this time. I'm escalating you to claims, she said. Please stay on the line. While I waited, I left a message for the lender's investigator. One sentence. Clear and direct. The deed is recorded. Quick claim to my daughter. Same notary. Same escrow. Claims picked up. A man this time. Calm. Focused. Do you still live in the house? He asked. Yes. Good, he said. Do not leave. Do not let anyone in. If anyone shows up claiming to be a buyer, realtor, or contractor, call the police immediately. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. So there's a sale in motion. A pre-closed title inquiry strongly suggests that, he replied. They move fast when they know they're racing the record. Racing the record. That phrase stuck with me. He explained the next steps. A police report. An emergency court filing to cloud the title. A notice that would freeze any attempt to sell or borrow against the property. I need your documents within the hour, he said. I'll send them, I replied. Before the call ended, he added something that made my stomach drop again. We've already received a payoff confirmation request from another title company. Another one. Not mine. Someone else preparing to close a new deal. I drove straight to the police station. At the front desk, I laid out the certified copies and said it plainly. A forged deed was recorded transferring my house to my daughter. The signature is not mine. The notarization is fraudulent. An escrow appears to be attempting to sell it. The officer's eyes sharpened. He told me to sit. A few minutes later, a detective came out. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he studied the deed carefully. Remote online notary, he said. We can subpoena the video and audit logs. If that's not you, this becomes felony level. Can you stop the sale? I asked. We can try, he said. But we need details. I slid the escrow information forward. As he wrote it down, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked up at me differently. Sir, he said, you need to come with me. Why? He didn't show me the screen yet. Because your daughter is at your house right now, he said, with a realtor. They're telling neighbors it's already sold. And just like that, the paper fight turned into a race home. I didn't argue with the detective. I didn't ask unnecessary questions. The moment he said my daughter was at my house with a realtor, I knew exactly what she was trying to do. She wanted witnesses. She wanted a story. She wanted control. We moved fast. The detective grabbed his jacket, his badge, and told me to stay close. We drove in his unmarked car, no sirens, no lights, just steady speed and purpose. On the way, my phone buzzed again. A text message. Open the door. We're finalizing things. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot and handed my phone to the detective. He glanced at it and nodded. This helps, he said. When we turned onto my street, I saw them immediately. My daughter stood on the sidewalk, dressed neatly like she was going to a business meeting. Beside her was a man in a blazer holding a leather folder. Realtor posture. Confident smile. Across the street, my neighbor stood on her porch, watching with concern. My daughter spotted the car and straightened, her smile already forming, until she saw the detective step out first. The smile didn't disappear. It cracked. The detective walked toward her calmly, badge visible. Elaine Mercer, he asked. She nodded. Yes. Who are you? Detective Harris, he said. Property crimes. The realtor took a step back instantly. This is a family matter, my daughter said quickly. We're just handling a transfer. No, the detective replied, firm but calm. You're the subject of an active investigation involving a forged deed and fraudulent notarization recorded yesterday. Her eyes widened. Forged? That's ridiculous. My father signed. Stop, the detective said, holding up a hand. Do not speak. He turned to the realtor. Sir, identify yourself. The man swallowed. I'm Darren Blake. I'm the listing agent. Who hired you? The detective asked. My client did, he said, glancing at my daughter. She owns the house now, my daughter snapped. Stop speaking, the detective said again. He asked the realtor for the escrow details. The hesitation in the man's face said everything. He finally handed over a single sheet. Palm Ridge escrow. A buyer name partially hidden. A closing date. And one line that made my chest tighten. Possession, immediate upon recording. Immediate possession. She wasn't just trying to sell my house. She was trying to push me out of it. The detective folded the paper and slipped it into his folder. Elaine Mercer, he said. You are being detained pending further investigation. Her voice rose. You can't do this. I paid his mortgage. I helped him. Paying a mortgage does not authorize forgery, the detective replied. She tried to move past him toward the house. He stepped in her path. No, he said firmly. A patrol car pulled up. Officers stepped out quietly, professionally. As they guided her toward the car, she turned and shouted toward the house. This is because of you, she yelled. You're ungrateful. I didn't step outside. I stayed behind my locked door and watched as the system finally did what it was supposed to do. The detective spoke briefly with the realtor, instructing him to turn over all communications. He thanked my neighbor for calling things in. Before leaving, he came to my door. Do not open it for anyone, he said. If anyone shows up with papers, take photos and call us. I will, I replied. As the patrol car pulled away, my phone buzzed one last time. A message sent just before her phone was taken. If you do this, I'll make sure you lose everything anyway. I saved it. Threats don't scare me anymore. They document intent. After the patrol car disappeared down the street, the silence felt unreal. Not peaceful, just empty, like the air after a storm passes, but the damage is still standing. 2 officers remained nearby for a while, parked down the block. Not because I asked, but because the situation called for it. I stayed inside. Doors locked. Curtains half closed. I didn't sit. I paced, phone in my hand, waiting for the next call. It came sooner than I expected. The investigator from the lender called back. Her voice was sharper now, focused. We pulled the remote notarization session, she said. The notary completed it yesterday afternoon. Was it me on the video? I asked. No, she replied. The woman's face is partially obscured, but the credential check used your social security number and a photo of your driver's license. My chest tightened. Where did the session originate? The IP address traces back to your daughter's home network. That was the moment I stopped feeling surprised. This wasn't impulse. It was execution. She continued. The same device was used to submit the payoff request, the deed, and the notarization. The payoff wire was initiated through escrow under a transfer file, not a borrower request. We've issued fraud alerts to the county and title platforms, she said. You'll receive a certified fraud packet shortly. I thanked her and forwarded everything to my title insurance claims officer. His reply came minutes later. Emergency action filed. Title is being clouded today. By noon, my attorney, assigned through title insurance, had filed for a temporary restraining order and a legal notice that froze any attempt to sell or transfer the property. The kind of notice every title company sees and immediately backs away from. Palm Ridge Escrow called me twice that afternoon. I didn't answer. The third call went to voicemail. Mr. Mercer, a man said, voice tight. There seems to be a misunderstanding. Please call us back so we can resolve this amicably. Amicably meant quietly, quickly, without police. I saved it. Later that day, the detective called again. We obtained the notary platform logs, he said. The session was initiated from your daughter's IP. The same device fingerprint appears on all filings. So it's linked, I said. It's linked, he confirmed. And escrow communications show coordination. Phrases like get it free and clear and close before he realizes. I closed my eyes, not in relief, but in exhaustion. What happens now? I asked. Charges are being filed, he said. Forgery, identity theft, filing a false instrument, attempted theft by deception, possibly conspiracy. Is she in custody? She was offered bail, he said. The prosecutor argued risk of continued harm. The judge issued conditions and a no-contact order. A no-contact order felt like oxygen. That evening, my daughter called from the detention facility. I didn't answer. Her voicemail came through anyway. They're treating me like a criminal, she said. This is humiliating. You need to fix this. I listened once, then saved it, then forwarded it to the detective. 2 days later, the court issued an order undoing the fraudulent deed and restoring the chain of title while the case proceeded. The county flagged the quitclaim as disputed. Any title search now would light up with warnings. The rushed sale collapsed. Escrow terminated the file due to fraud. The realtor handed over everything. I didn't feel victorious. I felt protected. For the first time in years, my home stopped feeling like leverage and started feeling like mine again. The days that followed moved differently. Slower on the surface, faster underneath. Every hour brought another confirmation that the system was tightening around what my daughter had done. My attorney called first thing in the morning. Calm voice. Organized list. The temporary restraining order is in place, she said. No transfer. No refinance. No sale. The property is frozen. Frozen sounded cold, but it felt like safety. She explained that the court had ordered the fraudulent deed marked as disputed in the county records. Any future title search would flag it instantly. No quiet closing. No backdoor deal. No pretending it never happened. Later that day, the detective called again. The prosecutor is moving forward, he said. Formal charges are being filed. I asked what that meant in plain terms. It means this isn't a family disagreement anymore, he said. It's a criminal case. He told me my daughter had been arraigned. The judge issued a no-contact order and restricted her from coming near my home. Any violation would mean immediate consequences. She tried to call you after being instructed not to, he added. I saved the voicemail, I said. Good, he replied. That matters. A week later, I sat in the back of the courtroom. Not for revenge. For reality. I watched as the charges were read aloud. Forgery. Identity theft. Filing false instruments. Attempted theft by deception. The words sounded clinical, but I knew what they meant. They meant she had crossed a line that love could not erase. Her attorney talked about stress, about intentions, about family misunderstandings. The judge didn't look impressed. Intentions don't notarize forged signatures, he said. And family does not excuse fraud. The bail conditions were tightened. The no-contact order remained. Devices were ordered surrendered for forensic review. I didn't look at my daughter as she was led away. I didn't need to. I already knew who she was trying to be in that moment. 2 weeks later, the notary was arrested. The detective called me with the update. Her commission has been revoked, he said. We matched platform logs across multiple questionable filings. It turned out I wasn't the only one. The escrow company came next. Investigators subpoenaed their communications. Emails, messages, file notes. The phrase closed before he realizes showed up more than once. That phrase ended any argument they might have had. The title insurance company finalized the corrective order. The fraudulent deed was formally voided. The satisfaction of mortgage remained valid, but ownership reverted fully to me. Clean, legal, recorded. For the first time since this began, I slept through the night. Not because I felt healed. Healing takes time. But because I felt protected. My house stopped being a bargaining chip. It stopped being a story someone else could tell. It became what it was always supposed to be, a place backed by records, not promises. I changed the locks anyway. Not out of fear. Out of clarity. The house felt quieter after that. Not empty. Just honest. Some people ask me if I regret letting it go this far. If I should have handled it privately. If I should have forgiven her to keep peace. Here's the truth. Mercy without boundaries is permission. And peace built on lies never lasts. What finally gave me peace wasn't punishment. It was consequences. After the court orders were in place, life didn't suddenly feel normal. It felt quieter. Not peaceful exactly, just no longer loud with threat. The no-contact order meant my phone stopped lighting up with manipulation disguised as concern. No more just checking on you. No more guilt wrapped in apologies that weren't real. Silence, I learned, can be a form of safety. My attorney advised me to document everything anyway. Old habits, screenshots, notes, dates, times. I kept a folder labeled just in case. I hoped I'd never need it again. The title company sent written confirmation that my ownership was restored fully and cleanly. No liens, no claims, no pending transfers. Every system that mattered now agreed on one thing. The house was mine. I stood in the living room one evening, looking at the walls like I was seeing them for the first time. The scuff near the doorway. The window that always stuck in winter. The place where I'd measured growth marks when she was younger. Memory doesn't disappear just because paperwork changes. Neighbors stopped by gently, one at a time. Some asked if everything was okay. Others didn't ask anything at all. They just said they were glad I was still there. Mrs. Klein across the street brought over soup. She didn't mention the day my daughter stood on the sidewalk calling the house sold. She just said, "You're home. That's what matters." I nodded. She was right. The detective checked in once more. The case was moving forward. Slow, deliberate. The kind of slow that means it's being taken seriously. These things don't resolve overnight, he said. But the evidence is strong. I didn't ask how long it would take. I wasn't waiting for closure from the court. I already had what mattered most. Security. I replaced my locks, updated my passwords, froze my credit, added extra verification to everything. Not because I was afraid, but because I was done being careless with trust. One afternoon, I found an old photo in a drawer. My daughter and me on the front steps, years ago. She was smiling. I looked proud. We both believed in something then. I didn't tear it up. I put it back. You don't erase history. You learn from it. People love to say family is everything. I used to believe that meant family came before boundaries, before law, before truth. Now I understand something better. Family doesn't mean access. Love doesn't mean control. And forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Some things can't be handled quietly. Some things demand sunlight. The system worked not because it was perfect, but because I stepped into it instead of trying to handle everything alone. That's the part people don't like to talk about. They want neat endings, reconciliations, apologies that fix everything. Real life doesn't always offer that. Sometimes the victory is smaller and stronger. A locked door, a clear record, a quiet night's sleep. I don't know what will happen to my daughter in the end. That's up to the court, and up to her. What I do know is this. I didn't lose my home, and I didn't lose myself trying to save someone who was willing to destroy both. When things finally slowed down, people started asking questions they hadn't asked before. Not out loud, always. Sometimes it was just a look. Sometimes a pause before a sentence. How did it get that far? Didn't you see it coming? Why didn't you stop her earlier? Those questions sound simple. They aren't. The truth is, nothing like this starts all at once. It starts in small ways that feel harmless. A suggestion, a favor, a moment where you give in because it's easier than explaining yourself again. I thought being patient made me a good father. I thought staying calm kept the peace. I thought love meant giving someone the benefit of the doubt, even when your instincts whispered otherwise. What I didn't understand was that silence can be mistaken for permission. Looking back, the warning signs were always there. The way she talked about what's fair instead of what was right. The way paperwork fascinated her more than people. The way she treated my house like a future asset instead of a home. But when it's your child, you don't see danger. You see potential. You remember who they were before the sharp edges formed. I replayed that last conversation in my kitchen more times than I can count. The way she asked me to put the house in the family's name. The way she framed it as protection. The way she reacted when I said no. That wasn't surprise. That was calculation. Saying no didn't create the problem. It revealed it. I also learned something about systems. People love to say systems don't care, that they're cold and slow and unfair. Sometimes that's true. But when systems work, they don't care who you are either. Mother, daughter, father. They care about records, logs, signatures, truth that can be verified. The system didn't save me because I was right. It saved me because I documented everything. Every screenshot, every voicemail, every document, every calm, factual statement I made instead of an emotional one. I didn't win by yelling. I didn't win by begging. I didn't win by trying to be understood. I won by being precise. That's a hard lesson for someone who believed relationships should be enough. Another thing I learned is that forgiveness is not a decision you make once. It's something you revisit. Sometimes you choose it. Sometimes you don't. And sometimes the healthiest thing is to pause it indefinitely. Forgiveness without accountability teaches people they can hurt you again. I don't know yet if I'll ever forgive my daughter. That's not something I owe anyone an answer to. Not friends. Not family. Not strangers who think blood should override behavior. What I do know is that protecting myself didn't make me cruel. It made me honest. This house has been many things over the years. Shelter, memory, responsibility. Now it's also a reminder, not of betrayal, but of the moment I finally chose clarity over comfort. And if I had to choose again, knowing everything I know now, I wouldn't hesitate. Because love should never cost you your safety, your stability, or your name. Time passed, but it didn't heal things the way people like to promise. It clarified them. The no-contact order meant my daughter was no longer part of my daily life, and I'd be lying if I said that felt easy. Silence doesn't just remove noise. It removes familiar weight, habits, expectations, roles you didn't realize you were still carrying. Some mornings I'd reach for my phone out of instinct, then stop. There was no one to check in on, no one waiting for reassurance. And that realization came with a strange mix of sadness and relief. I started noticing how much space her presence had taken up, even when she wasn't around. The way I used to rehearse conversations in my head. The way I softened my words before she even spoke. The way I'd already be bracing myself for the next request. That tension was gone. Friends noticed the change before I did. They said I looked calmer, more grounded, less distracted. I didn't feel calm. I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long that putting it down felt unfamiliar. I spent more time in my house without rushing through it. I fixed small things I'd ignored for years. A loose cabinet hinge, a leaky faucet, jobs that didn't matter before suddenly felt meaningful. Control, I realized, isn't about power. It's about choice. I chose what stayed broken and what got repaired. The legal process continued in the background. Updates came through my attorney. Motions filed. Evidence reviewed. Nothing dramatic. Just steady movement forward. I didn't attend every hearing. I didn't need to. Watching the system work once was enough. I trusted it now, not blindly, but realistically. One afternoon, a letter arrived from her attorney. Not an apology. A request. They wanted me to consider a settlement. Reduced charges. Cooperation. Mercy. I read it twice. Then I set it down. Mercy wasn't mine to give anymore. I hadn't called the police. I hadn't forged anything. I hadn't tried to sell a house that wasn't mine. The system responded to actions, not emotions. I told my attorney to respond politely and decline. That decision didn't come from anger. It came from acceptance. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step aside and let consequences do their work. I also learned how differently people react when family crosses a line. Some supported me without question. Others grew uncomfortable, like my situation challenged something they didn't want to think about. A few stopped calling. I didn't chase them. Not everyone can sit with the idea that boundaries can exist inside families. That love doesn't cancel accountability. That a parent can say no, even when it costs them comfort. That was okay. This experience narrowed my world in a good way. It left me with people who valued truth over appearances. And it left me with myself. For years, I defined myself by what I gave, what I fixed, what I tolerated. Now I was learning how to define myself by what I protected. That's not selfish. That's survival with dignity. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if my daughter will ever understand what she did or why it mattered so deeply. But I know this. Distance didn't destroy our relationship. Her choices did. Distance just made it visible. As the weeks turned into months, I stopped measuring time by court updates and started measuring it by how steady my days felt. Not perfect, just steady. I developed new routines without realizing it. Morning coffee on the back step instead of at the kitchen table where arguments used to happen. Evening walks instead of sitting in front of the TV replaying old conversations in my head. Routine became my anchor. The house felt different too. Not because anything had changed physically, but because the tension had left. I wasn't waiting for the next demand, the next emotional test, the next emergency. That wasn't really an emergency at all. I began to understand how much energy constant anticipation drains from a person. One afternoon, my attorney called to let me know the court had officially accepted all submitted evidence. The forged documents, the audit logs, the escrow communications. The case is solid, she said. Whatever happens next won't involve you needing to defend yourself again. That mattered more than the outcome. For the first time, I wasn't explaining. I wasn't justifying. I wasn't proving I wasn't the problem. I was simply living. I started reconnecting with parts of myself I'd neglected. Hobbies I'd dropped because they felt indulgent. Friends I drifted from because maintaining the relationship with my daughter took so much emotional space. I fixed up the garage, cleaned out old boxes, found things I thought were lost. Tools, notes, old receipts from the day I bought the house. I held the original closing paperwork in my hands and smiled at how heavy it once felt and how powerless it was compared to the truth. Security isn't paperwork alone. It's awareness. I also learned how grief can exist without longing. I didn't miss who my daughter had become. I missed who I thought she was. That distinction mattered. Missing the idea of someone doesn't mean you owe them access to your life. There were moments of guilt. Late nights when I wondered if I could have done something differently years ago. If a conversation, a boundary, or a decision might have changed her path. But guilt is endless if you let it be. I reminded myself of something simple. Adults are responsible for their actions. Love doesn't rewrite reality. One evening, a neighbor asked if things were finally back to normal. I thought about it for a moment before answering. No, I said. They're better. Normal would have meant returning to quiet pressure and unspoken fear. Better meant honesty, even when it cost me comfort. Better meant knowing my limits. Better meant choosing myself without apology. I don't tell this story because I want sympathy. I tell it because too many people stay silent when family crosses legal and moral lines. They hope it will stop on its own. It rarely does. If there's one thing I wish I'd understood earlier, it's this. You can love someone deeply and still refuse to let them harm you. That refusal doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. With distance came clarity, and clarity brought uncomfortable honesty. Not about my daughter alone, but about myself. I started noticing the moments I'd brushed aside over the years. Small things, easy to dismiss, each one harmless on its own. Together, they told a story I didn't want to hear at the time. She always wanted to be involved in my finances. Not openly controlling, just helpful. She asked questions about bills, paperwork, insurance. I told myself she was being responsible, that she cared. She spoke often about what's practical and what makes sense long-term. She talked about assets before she talked about people. I told myself that was just her way of planning for the future. When she suggested putting the house in the family's name years ago, I laughed it off. When she brought it up again later, I changed the subject. I didn't confront it because I didn't want conflict. That was my mistake. Avoiding conflict doesn't prevent harm. It only delays it. I ignored how often she tested my boundaries in small ways. Borrowing without asking. Speaking for me in conversations. Making decisions that weren't hers to make. Then acting surprised when I pushed back. Each time, I corrected gently. Each time, I assumed the message landed. It didn't. Boundaries that aren't enforced aren't boundaries. They're suggestions. I also ignored how she reacted when I said no. Not anger, resentment. The kind that simmers quietly. The kind that doesn't explode but waits. That should have told me something. Looking back, I understand that manipulation doesn't always come wrapped in cruelty. Sometimes it comes dressed as concern, as love, as knowing what's best for you. That's the most dangerous form. If someone respects you, they respect your no. They don't look for another way around it. I don't blame myself for trusting my child. Trust is natural. It's human. But I do hold myself accountable for not acting sooner when trust started to erode. That doesn't mean I caused what happened. It means I learned from it. Parents are often taught that sacrifice is love, that enduring discomfort is part of the job, that putting yourself last proves devotion. But there's a line between sacrifice and self-erasure. I crossed it slowly, without realizing. This experience forced me to redraw that line with clarity and permanence. If I could speak to my younger self, I wouldn't tell him to love less. I'd tell him to protect more. Protect his peace. Protect his independence. Protect the right to say no without explanation. Because the people who truly love you don't need you to disappear for their comfort. They don't need control to feel secure. They don't need ownership to feel close. The signs were there. I just didn't know how to read them yet. Now I do. And that knowledge, as painful as it was to earn, is something no one can take from me again. If there's one reason I keep telling this story, it's not to relive it. It's to interrupt someone else's before it reaches the same point. Parents are often taught to endure, to absorb discomfort, to smooth things over, especially when the conflict involves their own children. We're told that love means patience without limits. That belief is dangerous. If your child pressures you about your finances, your property, or your legal decisions, pause. That pressure is information. It doesn't mean your child is evil, but it does mean something is wrong. Pay attention to how they respond when you say no. Respect looks like acceptance, even when it's disappointing. Manipulation looks like persistence disguised as concern. If your child starts talking about your assets more than your well-being, that's not planning. That's positioning. Another thing I wish I'd known sooner is this. Secrecy is a warning sign. If someone wants you to handle things quietly, off the record, or just between us, ask yourself why. Healthy people don't fear transparency. I also want parents to understand that asking for help doesn't mean you failed. When I walked into that lender's office, when I went to the county recorder, when I spoke to police, I wasn't betraying my family. I was protecting myself. The moment someone commits fraud, they've already left the realm of private resolution. You don't bring something like that back with a conversation. I know some parents worry that involving authorities will permanently damage the relationship. But the truth is, the damage already exists by the time fraud enters the picture. Ignoring it doesn't heal it. It only enables it. One of the hardest lessons for me was accepting that love doesn't entitle someone to your vulnerability, especially when they've shown they will use it against you. You can love your child and still refuse to sign documents. You can love your child and still say no to financial control. You can love your child and still call things what they are. Parents often fear being labeled cruel or unforgiving. But boundaries aren't cruelty. They're clarity. If someone reacts to your boundary with anger, guilt, or punishment, that tells you the boundary was necessary. I also encourage parents to document everything. Keep records. Keep copies. Take screenshots. You're not being paranoid. You're being prepared. Trust should never require blindness. Finally, I want to say this clearly, because too many people need to hear it. You are allowed to protect what you worked for. You are allowed to protect your home. You are allowed to protect your identity. No one, not even your child, has the right to take those things from you. If someone tries, the most loving thing you can do is stop them. Not with shouting, not with pleading, but with truth, documentation, and consequences. That's not bitterness. That's wisdom earned the hard way. By the time the case moved out of the headlines of my own life and in a quiet legal process, I realized something unexpected had happened. I had stopped waiting for permission to be at peace. For most of my life, peace felt conditional. Something I earned by being agreeable, patient, flexible. Something that could be taken away the moment someone close to me was unhappy. That belief kept me stuck longer than it should have. Now, peace felt different. Solid. Private. Mine. I didn't need my daughter to understand what she'd done. I didn't need her to apologize. I didn't even need the court to finish its work for me to feel settled. Those things mattered, but they were no longer requirements for my well-being. I learned that closure isn't something another person gives you. It's something you claim when you stop reopening the same wound, hoping it will heal differently. I made small, intentional choices that reinforced that truth. I stopped explaining my decisions to people who questioned them. I stopped defending boundaries that were already clear. I stopped revisiting conversations in my head that would never happen in real life. I focused on what was real. Mornings with quiet coffee. Evenings without tension. A home that felt safe again. I also learned to accept grief without letting it define me. Losing the relationship I thought I had with my daughter hurt. I didn't deny that. But grief doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. Sometimes grief is the cost of choosing yourself. I stopped measuring my worth by how much I endured. I stopped confusing tolerance with strength. Real strength, I discovered, looks calm. It doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It stands still and refuses to be moved. People asked if I was angry. I wasn't. Anger burns hot and fast. What I felt was clarity, and clarity lasts. I didn't wish harm on my daughter. I wished understanding, for myself first. If she ever reaches it, that will be her journey, not mine to manage. I also learned that family doesn't get to rewrite reality just because the truth is uncomfortable. Love doesn't mean protecting someone from consequences they chose. It means stepping out of the way and letting them face what they created. This house, once the center of conflict, became a symbol of something else entirely. Not ownership, not victory, stability. It stood quietly, unchanged, while everything else rearranged itself around it. Just walls and floors and memories, but also proof that I could survive betrayal without becoming bitter. That mattered to me. If there's one thing I hope people take from my story, it's this. You don't need anyone's approval to protect your life. Not your child's, not your family's, not society's idea of what love should look like. Peace doesn't ask permission. It waits for you to choose it. I used to think endings came with big moments. Apologies. Reunions. Final conversations where everything finally made sense. That's not how this ended. There was no dramatic call. No tearful confession. No sudden understanding. The case moved forward quietly, through paperwork and court dates I no longer needed to attend. And one day, without ceremony, my attorney called and said, "The court has finalized the order." The fraudulent deed was permanently voided. The title was restored fully and cleanly. The no-contact order remained in place. Conditions were set. That was it. I hung up the phone and sat at my kitchen table. The same table where the last request had been made. The same place where I'd said no and unknowingly changed everything. I expected to feel something bigger. Instead, I felt steady. The ending wasn't loud because it didn't need to be. The story had already taught me what it was meant to teach. I no longer measured family by proximity. I no longer measured love by sacrifice. I no longer measured peace by how quiet I kept other people. The house was still standing. The walls hadn't moved. The floors hadn't changed. But I had. I started noticing how often I smiled without forcing it. How often my shoulders felt relaxed. How rarely I second-guessed myself. Those changes didn't come from winning a case. They came from choosing myself. I don't tell this story to warn people away from loving their children. Love is still good, necessary, powerful, but love without boundaries is not love. It's vulnerability without protection. If my daughter ever finds her way to accountability, I hope it brings her growth. If she doesn't, that will be a consequence of her choices, not my failure as a father. That was the hardest truth to accept and the most freeing. I used to believe that being a good parent meant fixing everything, absorbing everything, carrying everything. Now I know better. Being a good parent also means knowing when to stop carrying what was never yours to hold. This ending didn't come with forgiveness. It came with clarity. And clarity, I've learned, is enough.